Welcome to this video where we'll look at making the ball jump. So at the moment, if I hit play here, we can only move it left and right and then sort of backwards and forwards into the scene. And so we want to be able to make it jump. Now, obviously, for this particular level, that's not too important. But, if you were trying to make this a sort of a more interesting level, that might be useful. So let us see how we can get this to jump. I am going to use um, sort of an input as well, and then we'll just sort of affect the vertical motion here. So let's go into our script, and so let's go back to our Marble controller. And once we open that up, we're going to follow something that's very similar. We're going to create a variable that will contain our jump sort of input, and then we're going to affect the vertical here. So let's just sort of get rid of this. I'm going to get rid of that there. We'll do this slightly different here. So let's just sort of come up here. We've got move horizontal, move vertical, and I'm going to put a jump in here. So put that as a float, and I'll just call it jump. And then there is actually, so get axis, there is a jump button that is mapped to the spacebar. So just to remind you about that, if we go back here and we go under edit and then project settings, I believe, and then we've got our input manager and we've got our axes. Somewhere down here, there's jump, and we can take a little look at it. Jump, it is a spacebar. There's no other button there, but you could obviously change it up. And there's sort of, those settings, we'll just sort of leave them as they are. So jump will function the same way as the other one. And I believe what we can just do here is throw this in. Now, I'm going to be a little bit more careful with it there. I could just throw it in, but the trouble I've found is that you don't have that control, right? We've got the speed here, and the trouble is that speed is good for the movement, but may not be good for the jump. So what I'm going to do is actually create another vector3. And this one, now I'm going to go jump movement, sure, that's a good name for it. And we'll sort of get rid of this. Now, what I want to do is keep that. I don't want to set the force to 0. No, that's okay, because we're going to add the force. So there'll just be no added force. It's on the y-axis that I want to do this. So I'm going to set this to jump. And then we'll set that to 0 there. So I think that will be okay. And then I'm just going to come down here, and I'm going to add another add force. And this time with the jump movement, I'm going to create a different variable. I won't call it speed. I'll call it jump force, for lack of a better term, times the time.delta time. So this has gone red here because I have not declared it. So I'm going to come back up here, and I'll just do it right under speed here. Public, float, doesn't really matter. Jump force. And then that way, this should be okay. Yep, I don't see any problems here. So let's take a little look here and play around with the numbers and see if we can get it to work. When we go back to Unity, we should have access on our marble here to a new thing, a jump force. And so with speed, let me pump up that speed here because my speed was pretty low. That jump force there, I always say go big at the start. I mean, if it's too big, obviously we can dial it down. So I'm going to put it up to 1,000 just to see what happens here. Hit play. And actually, okay, so it's a little bit hard to tell. We're going to talk about double jumps in a second. If I just click it once, I get that height. That's going to be pretty slow. I'm going to change this. Yeah, so let me, it's pretty low there. I'm going to go up to 5,000 and see how that does. I'm still in play mode. Now that's a little bit too high. So somewhere in there is going to be our good number. So that's 2,000. That's not bad. Now there is a bit of an issue, and that is that I can keep pressing and pressing and pressing, and I can double, triple, quadruple jump. And so that's not what we want. So we want to be able to basically probably jump once, although I guess you could make like a, like a Mario where he can sort of jump an extra jump if you double click or something. You could do something like that. but our primary objective here is just to prevent us from having double jumping. Now, what I'm going to do is come over to the ground. I'm actually going to tag the ground. And in this part of this game here, it's really quite simple. But I'm going to create a tag, and I'm just going to call it ground. So pretty obvious. But what I could do is if I had multiple grounds, I could tag them all grounds. So what that will be able to identify is when the ball hits the ground, we can prevent it, we can allow it to jump, but when it leaves the ground, then we will prevent it from doing that. So what I'm going to do is here, so if they've pressed the jump, so I think what I have to do is, I'm changing it up as I go here. So you're watching Mr. Fleming think and program as we go. So what I'm going to do is just put in if the jump value is greater than 1. So jump is actually greater than 0. So jump, yeah, so that should give me a number there. So as soon as the jump goes greater than 0, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a Boolean, and I'm going to say on ground, and I haven't created this, is set to false. Okay? Now, a Boolean will be either true or false. So I'm going to come up over here. We'll make this public again so we can see it. And we'll call it a bool, because that's short for Boolean. And then we'll call this, like I said, on ground. So this variable will hold on to whether the ball is on the ground or not. So at the start of the game, let's just make sure that the ball is on the ground. So we're going to set that to true. And then, like I said, once that jump force, basically, this jump, because when I input some value, it should be greater than 0, it will set on ground to false. Now, the trouble is, of course, there is no way to set it back. And we'll talk about that in a second once we prove to ourselves that this is working. So let me see. Again, I'm going to click on the marble. And so now there should be a little box that says on ground. When I hit play, because it's set to true at the start, it should be on the ground. With that, I should be able to jump. So if I click, I jumped once. And notice here, now on ground is off. I can still jump. So what I have to do as well is come over here, and I'm going to wrap this little guy in if on ground. Now I'm going to do it the easy way to understand, is true. Yeah, he doesn't like this, I don't think. Let's just see. Oh no, that's fine. So if on ground is true, then this here. Now, it is giving me a little bit of an error because it does not like this to be inside that. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to declare that variable outside and then set the value inside. Okay, don't worry too much about that, but the idea was that because of this is an if, it doesn't know what this is, unassigned local variable jump. So actually let me give it a value to begin with. There we go. So if I've got float jump is equal to 0, then if it's on ground is true, then jump can work. Otherwise, jump value here is going to be 0. So I just had to set that here. And because, like I said, that value always has to be accessible, then I just made that into it there. Okay, so I've made that variable, set it to 0. This will change it if it needs to be, if we press the spacebar, and then that should work. Okay, let's make sure that we don't have any double jumping. And then we have to do one more thing. So, whoops, there we go. I think I saved it. Okay, now it did seem to jump. I'm going to bump that up because I think now, as soon as I press it, it does jump. Okay, so I can't jump anymore, which is good. This value, I'm going to go over 10,000. The reason is before it was doing multiple presses. So yeah, so I mean, that seems to be okay. Now, the last little bit of it here is doing the making sure that it's on the ground. And so I'm going to come down. Well, we've got the on trigger enter. I'm just going to come down below that on trigger enter, and I'm going to use something called on collision enter. And this is, just press enter there, very similar to the on trigger enter, but because we don't want it to fall through the ground, it's not a trigger, we actually want it to collide. This is going to detect the collision. And we can do it the same thing as before. If game object, if other, or collision dot game object, so they call it collision, dot compare tag is equal to, and we call this ground. I think I did lowercase. I'll double check after. Then, so basically once this ball touches the ground, then what we're going to do is we're going to set that on ground back to true. So that way it should alternate between, when I jump, it goes to false, so it's off the ground, and therefore I can't jump. And then once I hit the ground, though, then it goes back to on ground and sets to true. So let's just see if this actually works. Oops. Send that back. Okay, hit play. And again, what I'm looking for here, so it's on ground, press the button. Okay, so I am having a little bit of an issue. Did I? I capitalized ground. Silly me. Okay, well, not silly me. I usually do capitalize it. So let me save it. And that's where consistency is important. And for some reason, I was inconsistent there. Okay, so let's go back. Let's see if this works. So again, just checking on my marble. It's on ground. Press my button. Jumps. There, and now it's back. So can't double jump, but I can jump multiple times. So if I move it around, I can jump, and then I can jump, but I can't double jump, okay? Now, of course, part of the issue would be I can probably, actually, no, there we go. I can jump off the end of the world. If that happens, you might have to reset the position of the player, but hopefully that gives you an idea about what you can do to get your player to jump and then also prevent it from double jumping.